Welcome to Doc Secret, the show where we uncover the playbooks, strategies, and stories behind the most successful dental and medical practice owners and the companies that serve them. This show is all about building the best practice. Whether you're a dental or medical student dreaming of private practice, a seasoned doctor looking to grow or sell, or an investor exploring the healthcare space, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Kevin Carl, and in today's episode, we're diving into the world of equine veterinary care. Let's get started. Welcome to Doc Secret. Joining me today is Dr. Rozann Stay. Dr. Stay launched Iowa Equine in 2012. In practice, Dr. Stay's greatest passions are understanding the goals of individual owners and finding ways to help individual horses perform their best so that these goals can be reached. Dr. Stay believes that each horse and rider combination are unique and takes a flexible and open minded approach to solving performance issues and health challenges. Dr. Stay attended Iowa State University College of Veterinary Medicine. Dr. Stay, Rozann, if you will, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start at the beginning. It seems like a natural question. When did your love of horses first take hold?
Yeah, that's I don't know that I have an answer because I can't think of a time when I didn't love horses. Yeah, I remember being small and just always asking for a horse like all kids, right? I want a pony for Christmas, except for I was very, very serious about that. My parents got me a stick horse one year and I was so disappointed, but not disappointed enough to not ride the stick horse every single place I went. I think my parents maybe actually regretted that. They probably would have been better off with the pony than the stick horse.
So you grew up around horses. Is it safe to say
Well,
that?
not until I think I was 11 when I finally wore my parents down. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, eventually they gave in to your
They
persistence,
did.
right?
Yeah, it was not a passing phase.
Well, what led you to pursue veterinary medicine and ultimately launch Iowa Equine?
Yeah. So I would say I was an accidental veterinarian. So growing up, I just really liked horses, liked riding and training horses. Couldn't really think of a way to put that together into a career. I'm also a very creative person. I like to draw and paint. We had a local university, and so I enrolled there as an art major initially, but didn't really take to that either. And my best friend growing up, she was my best friend and my neighbor, and we rode horses together all the time. And she very much knew she was going to vet school. And I, not really thinking of anything better to do, thought, okay, well, I'll do that too. And so that's that's how I wound up going to vet school. Sort of just maybe accidentally. But I think it's been a good career in that there's a lot of room for creativity in the veterinary space. Yeah. And then launching Iowa Equine, fortunately, I did that a little more purposefully than I did going to vet school. I graduated, had my first job. It was problematic in a variety of ways. And as I looked for other jobs in the equine industry, I thought that they all sort of had sort of these overlapping issues. And I thought it seems like I should be able to figure out a way to do that a little better. So I tried, and maybe I'm still trying to do that.
Mm. Well, we're gonna dig into that and we'll see, right? So, well, tell us about your first horse you mentioned, right? Ash, did I get that right? Yeah.
Ash, yeah, her name was Ash. She was gray as expected.
Okay.
Yeah, she just was the perfect horse. We bought her from somebody that we lived close to, and I got to be really good friends with their daughter, through that. That's the way we met, is that we bought their horse, and she just was perfect. Everybody has these. I think when I talk to people who aren't in horses, when you say, "I'm a horse vet," they say, "Well, I rode a horse once," and then they tell you this awful story about this horse who really scared
Uh-huh.
them or hurt them, and fortunately, my first horse was just so, so safe and patient and let all the kids ride her, and, I mean, I went everywhere with her, and it was really, it's just really special to have that. I grew up in northern Minnesota, in a rural area, and it just was really beautiful there, right? Lots of trees and lakes and all of this, and I would just get on my horse in the morning and and just go. And we had a house rule that it had to be back by dark. And I thought dark meant you truly couldn't see anymore. My mom thought dark meant like dusk. And so there were some disagreements about that, but I was literally on my horse Ash all day long. And so it just really a lot of connection just with like the world around me, and just there's a lot of peace being on a horse and being in nature. So I feel really lucky that I had that really special first horse and those special first experiences that I can take with me.
Yeah, and I bet you were always happy for the really, really long summer days in Minnesota
Yes,
that
yeah.
you could do
And
that.
up there, they can be really quite long, so
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I used to work up there in Minneapolis. Always,
Mhm.
yeah, it's something to get used to.
Yeah, it's different for sure.
Well, what do you love most about working in equine veterinary care?
Y yeah, I think I get bored easily, and there's always something to entertain, I guess, in equine practice. It's, it is unique that we go to people's farms and sort of have to, create a fully functioning clinic in a space we've never been in before in some cases. So you're always trying to, there's a little like MacGyver aspect to it, which is fun and challenging. And I just think there are so many puzzles to be solved every day. I really like to solve puzzles and think about how things work and how do we make them work better. And those types of puzzles seem to be endless in equine practice. So I think, medicine is always interesting, but I think as you go on in your career, it makes ever more sense, right? Human behavior is a persistent puzzle in some of these cases. And then I think right now in the equine space, we're sort of in a reckoning period, and that puzzle in particular interests me right now. How do we make this space sustainable in the long term for the people who are coming up behind, so that they have a great job to enter into as well.
Well, I've got a lot of questions for you on that front. I know that
Yeah.
that is a hot topic. Um, let's talk about your practice and your experience. Was there a specific moment when you knew you wanted to build your own practice?
I think maybe my, like, long-term memory is maybe just poor. My mom would say that, I always said I wanted to have my own business, and I don't remember that at all, but here I am. Like, so I guess I was right about myself at some point early on. Um, but, in when I kind of decided, okay, yes, I'm gonna go to vet school, and I'm like emulating my classmates of like, here are the things you do to get into vet school. So I go and do my job shadowing and get my job at the small animal clinic. And I had two like really different experiences right next to each other. I job shadowed a solo ambulatory equine practitioner in northern Minnesota, which is um it's of a very unique little niche sort of thing. And then I also worked at a small animal clinic, which just was, early 2000s. And at that time there, I lived in a relatively rural place, and they were really doing some progressive things as far as practices. And I got to sort of see the two juxtaposed next to each other, and experience them both. And it just seemed like, it just struck me that there was just a lot of flexibility in the way that you could create kind of what you wanted in terms of a practice scenario. And then I think couple that with just my first job experiences, where I think that was sort of what just was like, just go figure out how to do this. You can absolutely do this. Yeah.
Well, if we shadowed you for a day back then versus now and what you know and what you've lived through, what would surprise us most?
Yeah, the amount of organization and streamlining that is present today would have been not present at all at the beginning. So I took, I have a high tolerance for like risk and discomfort. So I kind of just hung my shingle and went for it. Which was it wound up being a little wild and crazy. Very, I would say like founder vibes, when you read stories now about founder culture. Fortunately, I was just a solo practitioner, so I didn't inflict that culture on anyone around me. But
Nobody had to
it
bear
just
witness to all the challenge.
that's right, that's right. I just worked insane hours, and, yeah, it just was I was all in, right? Like, I was like, "I have to make this go," and it did, right? So and I guess the personal investment was worth it, but it was definitely there's a lot of self-sacrifice that went into it. And now I think I have this, like, really orderly, peaceful cooperative group that I work with. So it's pretty night and day from where it started.
Yeah, and you've gone into this in a big way, as you mentioned, and sort of this really putting yourself out there. What's the biggest challenge that you face today at Iowa Equine?
Yeah, so right now we are caught in the equine veterinary shortage. So there's some pretty sobering statistics about new graduates, right? So I think somewhere around between 4 and 5% of all new graduates enter the equine space after they graduate, and then within 5 years, half of those leave and go
Wow.
to something else. Yeah, so oftentimes they're going to small animals, sometimes they'll go to industry, but they don't stay practicing in equine medicine. And so we do have opening for 1.5 veterinarians right now, and like a lot of people around the country, we're struggling to fill that.
Well, I know this staffing crisis is, you know, frankly, it's reached news channels and certainly those like yourself who are practicing are living it day to day. Could you describe what that staffing crisis looks like from your perspective?
Yeah, for us, so of course we're business owners, right? So we have numbers that we're trying to sustain. We have staff wages that we want to maintain, and so we have to try to see the same volume, the same case volume, just with fewer people. So that means, so I have a partner in this practice, Dr. Stephanie White, and that means we just shoulder whatever is left over. So our number of hours per week are increasing despite the fact that for the last decade, we've been trying to make sure that the number of hours per week is reasonable. We've really been successful in crafting that here. We're just sort of unfortunately caught in what is a national shortage. So we are having to put in more hours. For us, you know, it's it's one thing to sit around and lament that it's happening, but the reality is that we live in this is the world that we're living in right now. So for us, we're really putting an emphasis on just making sure that we are really maximizing any kind of efficiencies that are possible in the clinic. One, I think, downfall for equine practices is that we're not able to achieve the same efficiency that they're able to achieve in small animal practices just because of the format. It tends to be one animal at a time rather than multiple rooms. So I have a lot of friends that own small animal practices, so I'm calling them often. I'll go and do even a shadow day and just sit in their clinic and see what they're doing and see what I can bring home. And then really we're trying to find qualified support staff and do a better job of leveraging our support staff. That's another major downfall in equine practice is that we're really poor at leveraging our qualified technicians. I don't know why that tradition exists, right? I graduated in 2011 and it was already here when I got here, but we're trying to undo that at our practice, and really leverage our qualified staff to the extent that their license allows. Yeah.
And does that mean that they're coming with you on, barn calls, anytime, anywhere, or does that mean that they're doing more back at the clinic, or how does that look?
Yeah, more at the clinic or really, so oftentimes in equine practice, it's one technician or assistant paired with one doctor, and they kind of move through the day in that pairing. As we move to try to have clients bring their horses into the clinic, and now recently we've added another treatment exam room. So now we actually are able to run more than one exam room and kind of keep teams of people bringing horses in and getting things ready. Yeah, so they certainly do go out in the field with us, but if you imagine that if you have 9 productive hours out of a day, you could spend anywhere between 2 and 4 of those hours driving. That's not a very good place to have a qualified technician.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it the driving and transport that has made the model so unsustainable, or is it the time demand? What is really driving the unsustainable nature of the model?
Yeah, I think that's really multifaceted, right? I think ultimately it's money, right? So student loans have really gotten wildly inflated in the small animal sector. The with venture capital money coming in and corporatization of these small animal practices, they are able to support salaries that are much higher than traditionally been offered in private practices just because they have size, right? They've been able to scale. So that leaves private practices competing in this corporate landscape, trying to compete in the corporate landscape, right? And then take that back to where equine in the equine space, we can't achieve those high salaries in a lot of cases because we can't reach the same efficiencies. And so, as these student loans get higher and higher, these students absolutely need to be making financial decisions that are good for their long term well-being, right? And, oftentimes the salaries of equine practice aren't totally able to support that and sustain it in a healthy way for them. So that's probably the, like, peak of the mountain, right? And then everything else rolls down from there. And there are lots of things that we talk about, right? Like, on-call hours and long work schedules. There's certainly some, there are culture issues for sure, um, both in the veterinary side and the client side, all of those things. But at the end of the day, people need to afford to live their lives, and, unless we can figure out some efficiencies in equine practice, people, I don't think, are gonna be able to afford to be in the space unless they already come from a place where they're not in debt, right?
Sure. Yeah. Let's talk about the culture piece for a minute. You mentioned, for example, when you first came into the space, it was sort of that way, and you've inherited some challenges. That points to challenge in culture. And I know there seems to be this, we'll do it regardless of time, day, etc. The self-sacrifice mindset that's embedded in veterinary training, or maybe in the equine tradition itself. That it does that need to be re-examined?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, horses get sick when they get sick, right? Um they don't know what time it is, they don't know it's Saturday, they don't know it's Christmas. Um, with that in mind, I think, for example, like last week, we took 4 emergency calls within an hour. None of them were our established clients, so they're just people we've never seen them before. They can't get anybody else to answer the phone. They're calling us, and one of them, the horse had been having an issue since 7 in the morning, and they did called at 6 at night.
Oh, wow.
And so those things are pretty common. So I think part of it is that horses just get sick with whenever, right? But part of it is that historically veterinarians have been like responding to all of those things in a way that really normalizes it for the clients. And so there is, as the demographics of the practicing veterinarians shift, the clients are going to have to go through a retraining, and it's painful.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's uncomfortable. Yeah.
How are you seeing these pressures affect young veterinarians, those who are just coming in, maybe the vet techs who've been around a while, and then, of course, yourself as a practice owner? How are these pressures manifesting themselves across those 3 different groups?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, people just aren't entering the space, right? They're just and you know, how do I approach that? What is happening? I think for people who are maybe a little more established in the career, I think if you manage to be in and stay in for a long period of time, you probably have pretty good emotional coping skills to be able to kind of move through those time periods where it's very busy and just know that, like, okay, well, this is this week and next week will be different and move on. But I do think, at the risk of sounding sort of like a grouchy old woman, I do think the younger generations, I think they're just coming in with more trepidation about lots of things. And so when they meet these things that are challenging, I just think they're more apt to just seek something else rather than to kind of like dig in and troubleshoot it or self-examine. It seems that way. I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't ever wanna incriminate a generation of people as a whole. Obviously,
Sure.
there are
Yeah.
individual variation to everything.
Well, there are very real risks, right, if the trend continues. So, I think, the question in my mind would be, well, what does that mean for horses, the horse industry, owners,
Yeah.
right, the profession? If
Yeah, from my little area of the country, which is, we are not super horse dense here in Iowa. There is definitely a lot of horse activity here, but we're not Florida, we're not Kentucky, we're not Texas, right? In this area, we've seen trainers actually pick up and move to more horse dense areas. So we've taken their horses and just gone to where the horse activity is, right? So I think in those horse dense places, um, probably nothing will change much, right? They're still attracting a majority of the veterinarians, and I think in there's a lot of kind of, people really get validation off of maybe, like, working on expensive horses. I think that is a far-reaching quality among equine veterinarians, and so they are often attracted to those places because they get the feather in the cap of, "I did this for so and so," or whatever. And so I think those places they're never gonna have a hard time attracting people, but it's gonna be the middle areas of the country where it's already happening here, right? Like, there's whole areas of Iowa where there's just nobody who actually practices on horses. A lot of our clients we see are not from right in the central Iowa area.
Well, given all these challenges, right? What conversations do you personally wish were happening more often in vet schools or at industry conferences or within practice groups? What do you wish people were talking more about?
I think everybody's talking about this a lot, right? Everybody's well aware of what is going on. I think right now the AAEP, which is our national organization for equine practitioners, they're really doing quite a lot to try to offer some discussion about things that might be helpful. They put out publications, literature, whatever, just advertisements, suggestions about, doing, like, on-call share cooperatives, and a practice culture. They put out a best practices guide on internships. I think all of these things are just, it's good that they're here now. They're just we need them.
So looking ahead, what needs to change structurally or culturally in equine vet practices over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I I like to use this saying that, a rising tide raises all ships, right? So I think, as practitioners who are already established, people who are running practices, people who are in a leadership position within the industry, I just think we all need to be really, like, really put our money where our mouth is, right? And respond honestly to as we have a new generation of people coming up who, maybe we're not all in lockstep on what work values are. If we are going to have those people come up and successfully enter this profession and stay in it, I think we still need to be responsive to those things that they're saying. So, when one practitioner goes out to see a horse at 9 o'clock because they're bored and this is their friend and they don't charge an emergency fee, that becomes the norm to that individual. And for the next 20 years, if they're not using you as their vet, whoever they call, when they come out at 9 o'clock and say, okay, this is our emergency service call for coming out at 9 o'clock, they're always going to think, well, so and so didn't do that. And so anything that we do that's not like totally in line with professional values becomes a norm to a client. So I think in order for us all to go forward successfully and long into the future, we all need to be on the same page, which I don't know how you successfully pilot that mission. But I think the AAEP is doing a good job of trying to create like a unified, cohesive message on that. But really, everybody has to fully participate, right?
Yeah. What I think what you're hinting at there is there's a business model component to the interactions with clients. So what from your perspective, could a more sustainable and attractive business model look like in equine care?
Then current I think there's a lot of, I think it gets I think personal lives and a personal love of horses and a personal hobby of horses gets conflated with a personal business in horses oftentimes. And I think if we all, in small animal practice in general, people aren't like I think it's fewer and further between that somebody would like set up a small animal practice and also show dogs and only provide veterinary services to other people who also showed dogs on the same circuit as them. Like it's, in the horses, it can get so small and so kind of intertwined that it winds up eroding what are probably good long-term business practices. So I think if we could even just maybe disseminate more business knowledge to people who are practice owners, that would probably be really helpful. I think a lot of people are kind of winging it. And I think there's a real danger when you're, a solo practitioner nobody holds you accountable, but you also don't have necessarily you're alone, right? So when you're wondering something or like, is this best practice? Usually those decisions can be just sort of made on the fly rather than, sitting down with your partner or with your business advisors or whatever and saying, okay, here's how we're going to handle these situations. And so it just kind of erodes that professionalism, I think.
And it sounds very independent in that
It
sense.
is, yeah, and horse practitioners for sure, we're an independent lot, right? But I think you can remain independent while still being, like a responsible steward of the profession and, being collegial. I don't think those things are, um, mutually exclusive.
Well, over the years that you've been in practice, I'm sure you've explored or experimented with or maybe implemented strategies. I'd like to explore a few of those. What could you share? We talk a lot about the quote unquote house calls of of the industry, right? What does that look like from your perspective for centralized clinic model versus, constant road visits? What have you found in the trade-offs there?
So in our area of I think it's all really it's 100% good to have a centralized model, right? This is why small animal practices can offer the salaries they can offer because they are a centralized model. So, I think maybe the one negative about a centralized model is I think sometimes people's physical health suffers if you're stuck in an office all day, right? But apart from that, as far as like business financials, and patient care, staff satisfaction with their jobs, I think, at least in my experience, as we've done it here, everything's been better. We in this area of the country, we have a lot of boarding barns where people don't necessarily have horse trailers, and so it can be difficult for them to get their horse to the clinic. We are also in an area of the country where it can be very, very hot and also very, very cold. And so there are times of the year where we just simply draw a line and say, look, it's, you know, 10 degrees. I'm not gonna be able to use my hands without gloves on at your barn, so you're gonna have to come to the clinic where it's warm. Um, Almost always when clients do that, when they get into a climate controlled area and there's stocks and there's people to help and all of the equipment is readily available, we're able to do better diagnostics, more thorough workups. And I find invariably people get more open to bringing their horses in once they've come in once, because it's a better experience for them too. They don't have to worry about finding you stuff like, oh, can you bring me a hay bale so I can set my things on it? Like
Right.
it's just they get to kind of be a passenger in the appointment, and when horse owners are calling us for appointments anyway, they're stressed, right? So when you're at their house and then recruiting them to do things, I think it kind of makes the stress worse versus if they're able to come into the clinic and say, "Here's my horse, please take care of it." I think it down regulates the stress for them.
Right.
So usually they respond well to it. So we're able to do a better job for our patient. Our clients are more satisfied. It's better for our practice, obviously, because we can just increase volumes, which matters, right? It's at the end of the day, it's a business. There are no subsidies for us doing this. Um, and beyond that, like when we have our qualified technical staff, now they're not stuck holding horses for us, right? They can really expand in the skills that they've developed these skills. Now they can actually put them to work because they're not just holding the end of a lead rope for us.
Right. What about other business models that are maybe very common in today's, and maybe even becoming more common in today's human health landscape, like subscription wellness plans? Is that a thing that you see? Um,
It's a thing, yeah. Certainly, I think small animal practices do that a little more. We have not ever found a way to integrate that in our practice. I really, in my experience, our softwares are not as good. So I think balancing or like managing the financial aspect of that is tricky. There is unfortunately a well-known component of equine practice, and that's that you don't always get paid. There are there are some people who, like, have strong strategies for making sure they're not paying their vet bills in a timely way, and so as an industry, we can be a little more vulnerable in that type of situation. But I know small animal does use that. Then you just have to have staff who's gonna, like, manage it and make sure all the cards are going through and making sure that the treatments administered are aligning with what has been signed up for in the management plan and those things. So, it's a lot of legwork to execute those things. I think larger practices are able to shoulder that administrative burden a little better than smaller ones.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I'll come back maybe more on the technology front in a moment. I'd like to dig at that. But before I do, what about other strategies? So, for example, shared call staffing or schedule pooling with nearby practices. I know that depends a lot on density, as you talked about, but I'm curious whether that is.
It depends on cooperative nature as well, right? So, yes, the
Mhm.
AAEP is doing a great job of, really encouraging people to pursue this. We've already noted that there's an independent streak in equine practice, and the culture of equine practice can be, like, much more competitive than collegial.
A little more
Um,
sharp elbows. Yeah.
Yes, and so, like, in our area, we don't have, a cooperation with anybody. We've actually sent out a letter to all the surrounding practices just saying, like, "Hey, this is how we could work together," and got 0 responses from
Oh,
them. So, I think that happens in other areas of the country as well. So, yeah, you have to I think, and we all have to figure out how to cooperate and coexist together. There's obviously plenty of work to go around if we're saying there's a shortage of veterinarians to do the work. So, yeah. But it's a great option as long as everybody's willing to be collegial about it. Yeah.
right. That's always the sticky wicket, sounds like.
Yeah.
What role do you think telehealth, AI, digital tools, you mentioned some of the challenge with platforms in your field. What do you think some of these tools and advancements could potentially and realistically, maybe is the better word, play in your field?
So on the realistically front, I think equine practice makes up about 8% of the veterinary market. So we're not a very attractive place to invest um, money developing these programs, right? When you could have the other 92% in small animal. Unfortunately, our practice format with the mobile aspect just is just really quite different than small animal. And so the software's what's possible, I think a lot of things are possible. But I think getting over the hump of having somebody actually pony up and make one of those things, the reward is not as great as the reward of the other places. But I right now, for sure, everybody's all in on having AI do their records. That's a huge, help to people who are driving around. It's very easy to record while you're driving, or, um, just using a recording device, in the middle of the appointment. Even in equine practice, again, that gets complicated if you're in a small animal clinic or a medical office or dental office, whatever. You're in an office, there's a desktop computer. It's one person, you're talking about one thing, and then the visit is over. In a mobile setting, ambulatory setting, or horse owners, they often come with more than one horse, and they really like to talk about all of them simultaneously,
Oh, wow.
going back to, like, the first day they got them. So, they like to share a lot of information, and so wearing a recording device sometimes they're telling you about their friend's horse, right? So, it can be difficult for these, AI platforms to do well in an equine setting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so kind of taking those technologies and just, like, making them more applicable to the mobile environment, that could take us a long way. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that in a physical therapy setting. In fact, we were with a physical therapist in his practice the other day, and we were going through a demo of that functionality. And the good thing is there are trigger words that can sort through a lot of the, let's say, the background stuff, right? But when you're getting into the therapeutic pieces, whether that's identifying specific challenges or starting to document the protocols, that I could see that being challenging if you have an unstructured conversation with multiple horses, i.e., multiple patients in the same space. I hope that there's some technologist out there listening that's
Yeah.
hot on trying to fix that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's challenging. So far, I worked with a company briefly, who was trying to launch, one specifically for the veterinary space, and,
Mhm.
in that process, demoed basically everything that was available, 2 years ago. And we fo and our so we've used them, we've paid the subscriptions for them, and ultimately we've landed on just using ChatGPT, because you can actually alter, you can give it your own prompts, whereas because we work on horses and because it's different than dogs and cats, a lot of the prompts that these AI scribes are getting are not directed at the equine space. And so we would say, I had an example of one where like the horse came in, it's a barrel racing horse, primary sports medicine, also was a little overweight while it was there. And we mentioned the client said something, funny like, what can I do about why this horse so fat? And I said, oh, we do just feed it less. We were kind of, joking around. And um anyway, the scribe took it as, like, this horse is overweight and it's causing stress on the joints, and it, like, gave this whole, like, dog plan for the
Oh,
horse,
wow.
and
Okay.
really took it in a direction that wasn't applicable to the species at all. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's when we stay out of somebody's pre-done prompts, we're able to train it our own way,
Mhm.
which tends to give us way better outputs. So
Yeah.
that's where we've landed for now is, like, our one of our many equine workarounds.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, it gives me some food for thought for those that I talk to. If I hear of any good ones, I'll let you know. What advice do you have for practice owners who are struggling to retain staff? You talked a lot about staff in this conversation. Or maybe, gosh, maybe they're considering closing their practice because they can't find the staff or the economics are working. You've worked through some of these issues yourself. What is your advice to them?
Yeah, I think you just have to be I don't know, it's eating balls over time, right? I think at the end of the day, if somebody's, like, truly suffering and they can't stand to be doing this one more minute, they should stop, right? Because your mental health it is the most important thing. We know the statistic that veterinarians have a higher than average rate of suicide, right? The stresses in this profession are higher than average, and the response to those stresses is more extreme than average. So I think if people are really just thinking they can't make it anymore in this profession, there are many, many things in the world that we can go and do. Horses will find care. We don't have to single handedly prop up an entire industry. But I think if you're hopeful about remaining in practice, the economics of business is really it's pretty simple, right? You can either save your way into solvency or you can raise your prices. And I think a lot of times people are really reluctant to raise their prices because they don't want to make their clients mad. Um, but at the end of the day, if your goal is to keep your practice open, you have to be setting your prices at a rational level so that you can continue to exist as an entity. The staffing thing, that's hard. Veterinary medicine is a place where emotions run high.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think for us, we definitely went through our staffing challenges over the years. And as we did that, we really just drilled down hard on like what are our core values, what truly drives us, and what's going to drive like the way we evaluate and coach our staff. And that all of these things should be centered around the same values so that it's not a game of whack-a-mole when you're just, I'm feeling stressed out and now this bothers me. I think it's hard in veterinary practices, I think when the owners are the leaders and you're experiencing stresses that are maybe in excess of what the staff stresses are, it's really easy to pass that stress on to your team. So I think having like really good just values, policies, procedures in place and drilled down so that there's consistency. I think offering consistency to staff is just absolutely mandatory in high stress fields.
And you've got, a lot of experience with this, but what is your way of building culture and not just caring for horses, right, but for caring for people? How have you managed to do that in your practice?
Yeah, and this is gonna be, like, unsatisfyingly simple, but I think you actually have to care about people, right? And then I think the video and the audio have to match, so it's not enough to say, like, we care about culture and we care about work-life balance, and then you have everybody come in, after hours or whatever. I think you have to put your money where your mouth is. As an owner, sometimes that I just wind up having to do extra, right? That's my place as a practice owner. I still try to leave around 5 and come back or work in my office at home or whatever, but don't set the example even to everybody that we're gonna, like, overwork and sort of pour our whole lives into it because I think that's just a fast road to burnout, um,
Yeah.
to set that example for your staff. So I think you just have to actually care about them. You know, for us, we get a lot of young people. We're in close proximity to a university, young people wanting to go to vet school, and they're all kind of finding themselves, and they tend to find themselves while they're working for us. And you know, none of that is ever personal, right? Like, everybody that works, you know, I think we don't own employees, like, we all decide to work together, it's a mutual trade, and, if part of that is, you know, you realize this isn't for you, that's okay, it's not personal, right? It's just I don't know, just taking the emotion out of it, I think is helpful.
Well, what's next for Iowa Equine? I'd love to understand where you're headed with your practice.
Yeah,
What's
so well, ideally, we would find, additional associates. That's kind of gonna be paramount. So right now, while we're down in staff, you know, we're just really focusing on, making sure we take good care of our clients who've been established with us for a long time. Um, and looking for the ways that we're gonna complete the staffing puzzle in the environment that we're in. And then as far as, like, actual practice projects, you know, recently there was an additional building that had a tenant in it here for, the whole time we've been here, and we recently took over that building. So we have a new indoor arena and a whole new treatment area, and we're looking to expand into, doing some rehabilitation things for our population here.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
You got a lot going on.
Yeah, always something.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, Roseanne, I know that you probably are aware we close each show with a lightning round, quick questions, quick answers. Are you ready for that?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, what's one tool or piece of equipment you never leave your practice or the barn without?
Yeah, there's really a lot, but this is sedation.
Okay,
In a pinch, you have to be able to sedate it.
got it. What's your favorite horse breed and why?
Yeah, I don't have a favorite. And genuinely I don't. They're all so unique and have such different, like, little funny personality quirks that I think rather than picking a favorite, I feel really lucky to see a wide variety of horse breeds regularly and get to know them because they're very funny and very unique.
I can appreciate that. What's your go-to way to unwind after a long day?
So I don't think I'm at that sounds luxurious, but right now I have a 4-year-old daughter, and she's pretty much trying to open my car door before I've got my car in park when I get home. So I don't really, like, unwind so much as I just shift to something else that is, always new and exciting.
As a father of 2 daughters, I can appreciate that. What's the best advice you've ever received as a veterinarian?
I think probably just, like, trust yourself. Your hands are your best diagnostic tool. You don't have to get into the bells and whistles to do a really good job, as long as you're really paying attention to your patient.
What book has impacted you the most personally or professionally?
So yeah, I read a lot and I read varied books. So I think Women Who Run with the Wolves has been sort of my most recent aha book.
Okay, and why is that?
It's an interesting book. She kind of takes, like, maybe, like, pre-Christian fables and, like, reinterprets them as, I don't know, just sources of wisdom in the world.
Nice.
Yeah, it was just a very different take.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when do you drive a truck or a car?
I drive a hybrid SUV because I wanna save on my gas money. Yeah, we drive, like, 40,000 miles a year, so
All right, well, when you're in your SUV making
yeah.
calls, what's your favorite? Radio, podcasts, or silence?
Oh, yeah, so my staff would get after me for so you're normally, if I have somebody with me, I do silence. I really don't like the radio, and I really don't like radio ads, and then if I'm alone, I really prefer to listen to, like, spa music. So
Yeah, yeah.
I try not to subject my staff to that, and I just choose silence in their presence.
You like to unwind while you're
Yeah, I
yeah,
like to keep it zen while I'm in the car, yeah.
nice, nice. If you could wave a magic wand and fix one thing in equine vet med tomorrow, what would it be?
just 100% of the clients would have a trailer and be comfortable driving them around. Yeah.
Last question here. What's your dream trail ride destination?
Yeah, it's been so with my daughter, I haven't had an opportunity or haven't carved out opportunity to ride for several years now. But so I'm gonna pass on the trail ride and just say that I dream lately of returning to some of my artistic roots and having more time to just paint, and do some art.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Well, Dr. Rozann Stay, it has been an honor and pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for sharing your journey and your insights with us here on Doc Secret.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been nice.
Thank you. If you liked today's episode, please like and subscribe, and most importantly, share this podcast with others you think may benefit from the Doc Secrets shared here today. Thanks for joining us on today's episode, and we'll see you next time.